Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Sipping Tea with Stacy T. I'm Stacy. If you haven't met me before, thank you for being on today. Today's episode, you've got my vote. I'm really excited about. I'll be having a guest on as well today. So, really excited about the ability to talk about something, an experience that I went through that, quite frankly, I didn't think I would ever have experienced. And not many people have gone through that. So, it'll be a really interesting a time for you to ask lots of questions. Hopefully, you feel like you understand a little bit more about the journey of politics in general. And again, something that I never really anticipated walking into or stepping into, but it was an experience that I think many people should actually consider. Good afternoon, Tiffany. Thank you for logging in today. Hopefully, you are having good weather. We've had like honestly nonstop. It feels like nonstop rain. I think we had one day. I think they've said in the past, like I forget how many weeks we've only had one day where it didn't rain. So I think tomorrow's supposed to be the day. I think it's again supposed to rain again today. Not a shock. So hopefully you're doing well. Today's tea, for those of you who have not been on this journey with me every single time, it is called Sipping Tea with Stacy T. So for every single episode, I do have a tea that I am going to try. Today's tea was picked by none other than my sister, and it is called English Breakfast Lemon Style. All right, I see my partner in crime has joined the live today. So, all right, so she should be. But again, this is going to be the tea that I tried, which is Twinings English Breakfast Lemon. I will tell you that you know, it's been it's been interesting because a lot of the teas that I've tried, so I have, for those of you who don't know, when I first started, had this tea bag, and there's a bunch of loose, well, not loose teas, tea that are in separate bags that are in here, but many of them we thought we had gone through them, but many of them still were, as we're looking through them, are teas that I can't drink because they're herbal teas. So today's tea that I wanted to drink, we looked at it again and found out that it was an herbal tea. So it's a no can do. So let's get this started. Gonna put this in the mug. And today's mug, I needed to do the Be Happy. I think many of you have I think many of you have probably seen this one. Hopefully you can, oh, there you go. You can see it clearly now. The Be Happy mug, bright yellow, you can't not be happy with this one. So hopefully everything's going well. Seems to be a little bit of a technical difficulty. I keep clicking to accept the live.
Am
Oh,
I here?
yay!
I made it.
I'm like, what's going on?
It was
Finally.
so it said my camera, but then it said my camera and my microphone. And someday I'm going to learn how to use Instagram.
Well, welcome. For those of you, well, I'll introduce her in a second and I'll let her introduce herself. But this is the tea going in here. We're going to steep it. It's not that exciting. It's only English breakfast tea, which is like a normal black tea for those of you who are not tea drinkers, or for those of you who are, you know what I'm talking about. There's nothing really that exciting about the English breakfast style. But I do like Twinings in general. And most times, I will tell you, I do not put lemon in my tea. I'm not like, I don't add lemon. Um, I don't add like milk or cream or any of that. I just black tea with like some sugar. I know, Tiffany, honey. I should be using honey. Don't get on me. But yeah. So I'm gonna let that steep a little bit. And we have our guest, our special guest is in the building today for You've Got My Vote, which is none other than Eileen Del Rossi. I will let her introduce herself for those of you who have never seen her before, haven't had the opportunity to talk to her, and then we're going to get into it. So Eileen.
Okay. Good morning, Stacy. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. What was the tea that you were supposed to have before this one that was the herbal?
It was a mango orange. So I was really excited about it. Then I looked at it and I was like, yeah, I can't do it because I'll have a headache all day long. So unfortunately, herbal tea does that to me.
Okay, so my name is Eileen Del Rossi. I'm a special education teacher. I've been practicing, I wanted to say, but I've been teaching in my practice of special ed for 20 plus years. And it was 5 years ago, is it at this point that I decided I was teaching at Lowell High and had my own frustrations with having my own child in the system that we both ran for school committee, right? So it was
Yeah.
2021. I
Yeah.
can't believe it's been 5 years.
Yeah, it's funny how quickly time does go by because I was trying to like look for as I was advertising this, trying to look for pictures and trying to look for ways to, discuss the journey and all that stuff. And I was like, man, I'm really I'm scrolling back here because I will tell you the time does go by really quickly. So I'm gonna get into it because we have only a limited time. We try to keep this to less than an hour, and I feel like there's so much to get into. You kind of hinted at it a little bit, Eileen, but when you decided, tell me what led up to you saying, you know what, I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring. And before you say that, was politics anything you ever had considered, as a younger Eileen?
Um, Absolutely not. So I remember having these conversations with my uncle. God rest his soul, he passed away in 2018 when I was younger, and just talking about the city of Lowell and how there certain things didn't seem so fair, and why certain people got great jobs and certain people had to struggle or didn't get these great jobs and last names. So I had those conversations, and I knew it frustrated me early on. I could have not have told you that that meant politics. But I think my breaking point was it was the summer of 2020, 2020. No, it's the summer of 21. My son was in second grade over at the McAuliffe School, and they were dismissing the kids at that point because it was so hot in the buildings, and the buildings aren't appropriately ventilated. And so my son was playing on my emotions and like, Mom, it's too hot. I can't go to school and concentrate. And I allowed this. And then I was like, wait a second. I can donate an air conditioner, and then my kid can go to school. And I went and I got a standalone air conditioning unit, and I brought it to my son's second grade class. But it shouldn't be on the onus of parents to be doing this. That shouldn't even be an issue. We're in 2021 at that time. And and especially that was just really coming out of COVID too. And I
Mhm.
feel like COVID really seems like a blur, like that
Yeah.
2020, 2022, like where people were like, I don't know, and so I feel like those years were a blur. And I think that was maybe one of our first issues on the school committee too, was a parent wanted us to continue to wear masks,
Mhm. Mhm.
and she talked about her child's health issues.
Yeah.
And it struck me, and I was like, okay, I get it. When you're talking about the safety risk of your own child,
Yeah.
you have so many perspectives as a parent, as a teacher, and then as a school committee person, and I remember getting
No,
backlash.
you're right, but I don't want you to jump ahead because I'm going to talk about that. I think that people don't understand because there are steps to this whole thing, right? The actual running of it, we're going to talk a little bit about that. So I will say, as a young Stacy, I never intended to do politics, and to be quite frank with you, I still have issue the fact that I was involved in it. To be honest with you, but for me, there was a catalyst, and the catalyst was I don't know if it was just George Floyd's murder, but that was absolutely a catalyst for me. I think also there was, a real important need for me to look at the demographics of Lowell and recognize that there was nobody on the school committee that really was reflecting, all the needs, the diversity needs, the equity needs of the students. And, the fact that there was never a black person elected to office was jarring to me. It was, especially when you consider Lowell, right? You consider Lowell and the demographics of the actual people, the different races and the different cultures. And I was like, how is this even possible? Like, it's 2021. How is this possible? And then, I was getting lots of feedback because I, at that point, had been really involved in politics. Well, not politics, involved in the community. And people were saying, well, Stacey, why not try it? And I was like, no, thank you. Like, not interested. And then I kept getting people saying, well, I think that you'd be a good voice for people. I think that you should think about it.
You speak so eloquently too, and like that's the one thing I'm envious of you, the way that you can articulate and string together words to just it
That's
makes so much sense.
I appreciate that. I definitely feel like I got a lot of that from my mom. She language was like a big thing for her. She was a teacher like yourself.
And
And I
yeah.
taught for 11 years, but my mom taught for 45. So language and articulation and all those things were important. And my dad was a good storyteller too. Not to take that away from him, he was a really good storyteller. But I think that the for me it was like this impassioned thing. If not me, then who? And it wasn't like a thing like I felt like I was the only person that could articulate, but I really felt like I was a person that was not going to take away from the voices, because one of my big things was amplifying other people's voices. I never wanted to speak for people. I just wanted to give them a microphone. If they didn't feel like they were being heard, that was important to me. But it's funny because when I think about little Stacy, that was definitely not a dream, kind of like how you talk about your uncle. I mean, I thought maybe I would do like plays and like be on Broadway or something like that, or even be in a courtroom. But
Oh, I can see that.
I never thought that I would be on a school committee. So when you decided to run, how did you think of your slogan, and what was the process like for you while you were running? What did it feel like for you?
So the first initial thing was, do I pull papers or do I not pull papers? Do I even want to know somebody, want anyone to know I'm thinking about this? Because this is a huge plunge. I was currently, at that time, I was a special education teacher at Lowell High School. Like, what would people think of me for doing this? And it's all out of bounds, right? And then in just kind of figuring it out and then getting those 150 signatures and or wait, was it more, is it more than that? I
I think it was 200. Well, I think it was
250.
100. We had to get 200 because they were like, they're going to deny a whole bunch because of a whole bunch of reasons. It
Right,
was
yeah.
200 something signatures.
Yep.
So.
And I remember thinking that that'll be so easy. Like, I know enough people and I know where to get people, but I really learned even through that experience that people were skeptical of like, why do you want my signature? Like, what are you running for? And many people would make me talk like, what, why should I sign for this? Like, they make you work for it.
Yeah, they do.
I appreciated it, and it kind of gave me the time to start to think about it. Like, this was just to get on a ballot, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? But you could tell there was a distrust within the community of where are you going with this,
Oh,
right? Like,
absolutely. 100%. I totally and entirely agree with you, because I was kind of like, okay, 150 signatures, 200 signatures. Okay, that shouldn't be that bad. But it was really interesting. It was really interesting, the pushback. It was really interesting, the what, why are you running? Who are you? Why do you think that you'd be able to do it? But the interesting thing that I also got, because I remember, I believe your slogan was like student focused, something like that,
yeah,
right?
studentfocusedvoice.com, which I'm working on that website still. I don't know what I've done wrong. I think it has something to do with the DNS or CNA server or whatever. But yes.
No, but I think that that's a huge point. Like trying to find your slogan, right? Is like, because for me, and I believe for you specifically, because yours was really like coming from a parent perspective. Like you're a parent, but you were also a teacher. You're an educator in the system. But you're like, okay, this has to be about the students. It needs to be about the kids. And for me, that was the same thing. But I remember people pushing back on me because I don't have kids, right? And so that was a big pushback that I was getting. Like, how are
I
you on
didn't know
the school
that.
committee? Oh yeah, huge. Why are you trying to go on the school committee? Why don't you just go for city council? I was like, because I don't want to talk about potholes and trash. For every, like, I just don't have an interest in doing that. And I do get that there's more to it, but like at that time, that was all that they were talking about. Like every meeting was about potholes, and it's now the same thing, right? Potholes and trash.
And
But
Lowell High School.
in low high school, that's another big one now. So I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to have, an impact on the generation of young people and let them know that there are people willing to go out there and sacrifice for them and hear what they have to say, and that their opinions are valued. So once you kind of came up with your slogan, what was your next steps as far as going out there to run? Let me stop.
So
Let
it
me go
lit.
back. Were you afraid?
Oh, I
Like,
was
were you
so
nervous?
afraid. Like the stigma of like, I'm just this teacher at Lowell High. Like, what are people gonna think of me? What's my family gonna think of me? What are people, why does she think she has the right to do this? Like, who does she? And there was a lot of that, honestly, and there was a lot of judgment that I did get within my own family. Like, but like, why would you take more time away from your son? You already work full time. Like, and I felt like saying, like, I want to do this to better things for all of our children, you know? But I respect people's point of view. Like, I always think there's three sides to every story, like his, hers, and the truth lies in between, right? Whoever it is. And, I took that with a grain of salt, and I just let my conversations with those people that I had that really pushed me to ask me why, to really think of that student focused voice. And then my next thought was like, okay, an election. Think
Mm.
about an election. Like, what do you think of when you were younger? And I thought, bumper stickers. Everyone had a bumper sticker. That was a little different, right?
Especially in Lowell, that is absolutely 100% different. You're 100% correct. Because
Yeah.
I feel like in Lowell, a lot of the campaigning is so cut and paste. It's like copy and paste. Everybody does the same thing and has the same, like, goes to the same places to have their fundraisers. I mean, it feels like literally just copy and paste of the same junk over and over again. So I appreciate that was how you thought about it.
Yeah, and so honestly, and now I know, like right now, like in Centerville too, like the East End Club was always the place where people would go, right? Now the East End Club is closed, and it's Don Polsky is where it seems like people
Yeah.
are going. But you're right. I don't want it to be a copy paste. I do, like, everyone from the Highlands has it at Mount Pleasant, everyone from Belvedere at Long Meadow, right? But I was thinking also, because my district is 2 and 4, it's back
Yeah.
central, right? So
Right.
that opens it up a little bit.
Absolutely does. You have a lot of options. But the other thing that I will say, because, and going into that, one of the things that I will share that a lot of people don't know is that because I was a candidate running against, there was nobody in the seat. So this was the first time there was like an open, kind of an open election because there was nobody that had been an incumbent. And
Wait,
so,
and ca- for 1 second,
yeah,
this the first year that we ran too was the first year that it was divided into the districts too,
what?
right?
Yeah. So this was a
Okay.
brand new, we were in a brand new, whole situation. The election was entirely going to be different. The zoning was different. Like everything was different. Because prior to that, everybody had to run at large, right?
Yeah.
So I think that one of the things that was interesting about, running in the race that we ran in was that I was like, okay, Stacey, if you're going to run in this, you, for me, the biggest thing was walking out with integrity. Whatever happened, walking out with integrity. But a lot of people had already supported or backed the person that had been running because the person had run several times prior and people knew this person. And, there was a lot of, push behind to get this person elected. And so I would actually go to some of the restaurants in the district, which for me was 1 and 8, right? So I'd go to some of these places, these restaurants, because that's what I really was focused on is keeping it in the district so that, I was bringing, my fundraising or my conversation to my district. The big thing that I noticed was that they didn't want me to be there. I literally had restaurants say no. No, you cannot have your fundraiser here. You cannot we do not support you. And I was kind of like, I mean,
Yeah.
first of all, the thing that was crazy about that was that I didn't know that people so much supported this other person. So, I mean, I knew that there were people in the government, because that's a whole nother thing, right? There are people that in Lowell government already wanted this person, had already backed this person, were already doing some stuff down in the background that then later got exposed that they were doing to support my opponent. But I did not get any measure of like support in the district as far as having it at some of those restaurants. luckily I did get somebody who kind of opened doors, and I did have it, as you said, at the typical golf, Mount Pleasant. I had one there
All
because
right,
somebody
because that's
opened for
part,
me.
that's the like end of your section too,
Correct. That's
right?
the
When
Highland side. So not the protected side, but the Highland side. So for me, I really wanted to have something there, but it was really jarring that there was so much of a pushback that I would
pushback.
have. And that wasn't the only pushback, which I'll talk about momentarily, but like that was a big thing. So I see we have a question. What were some of the biggest barriers that we faced? So what were some of the biggest barriers that you faced in running for office?
For me, I think it was just figuring out how to get the like getting over the fear that I had, like why would I ever do this, right? And then accepting the judgment and like hearing what people had to say. That that's something that's always been difficult for me because I always want to think that everything is sunshine and flowers, right? And beautiful. Um, but yeah, I guess it was just being able to find the places where you can get these like signs made or these shirts made, right? Bumper stickers. How do you make that happen? Then all of a sudden you're getting calls from WCAP and the little sun, like, do you want to put ads out? And it's like, whoa, there's a lot of pieces going on here. And I haven't caught up.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think that was jarring for me too. I didn't. I mean, I think we've seen elections, right? So we know that people do those things. They have all the swag, the T-shirts and the caps and all this stuff. I think for me, it was because I didn't have. First of all, I'm supposedly a blow-in, right? Because I didn't
A blow
grow up
in.
in Lowell. But the funny thing is, I was born in Lowell. I was born at St. I was born at
Oh,
St.
you were born in Little General, at Little
Don't
General.
say Joseph's. Well, now it's a little general, but like, yeah, I was
Oh,
born
yes.
there. So it's like I was born in Lowell, and the reality of it is that doesn't make you a blowing buddy. That makes me somebody that was born in Lowell. But that's another
You were
story.
a blow back in.
Exactly. And so I think that people don't recognize that there's such a separation because people are like, oh, you're not from here. I don't know you. I don't know your family. And I think for me, when I speak about barriers, it's me not knowing whose family is whose family. Because when you grow up in Lowell, you're like, oh, don't talk about that person because that person's related to that person who's related to that person who hold
That
these.
is,
I didn't know any of the families. Like I didn't know any of that stuff, right? I mean, I knew some of the basics, but then I was like, oh, that person's related. That's that person's uncle, or that person's related through marriage. I didn't know any of that stuff. I
and
think,
there's a lot of that in this city.
oh my gosh, Eileen, so much, so much of that. Now, having been in office, I was like, I had no idea that this person was related to that person. There's a lot.
And
What people call nepotism. There's a lot of that in the city.
and one married couple could span the majority of all the families in Lowell.
And
Yeah.
you're so right. I remember, after getting to know you, you were like, oh, that person's related to that person. I was like, I had no idea. Eileen, thank you for telling me. And it's not that I talk junk about people, but it's
No.
always good to know who's who. And
Yes.
then when you're having these conversations, you understand what vantage point they're coming to you in the conversation. So yeah, that was very, very helpful.
I'm
Um,
very like relational and visual, so I almost have to see it for myself, right? And so then to connect all of that and then to be able to be like, okay, like there's a lot going on here and but surprisingly, it was because I came from Centerville that I grew up here that there was so many people that came out for me, which I didn't expect. I honestly didn't think I was going to win. I thought I'd throw a few ideas out there, let people know I was aggravated, and the incumbent would win.
I think that it's so funny because I think that we our us winning was a surprise to people on both sides. I think that was definitely the case. I know that people did not anticipate me winning because it was said to me multiple times, right? And I know that people didn't anticipate you winning because people were like, "Oh, it's just going to be something." She's doing great where she's like sharing her thoughts and ideas about from the parent perspective, from the teacher, the educator perspective, but people didn't anticipate us walking in and being sworn in. But
I don't
one thing,
think we really did either.
no, I honestly was like, maybe I have a chance, but I wasn't. People around me, I felt were more convinced than I was, to be entirely honest with you, because as I was walking through the whole process, I found more and more stuff that was, I'll just call it icky, gross happening behind the scenes. And it was disheartening, I have to say, because, I'm a person that, if you don't like me, I'm fine with you not liking me. I get that not everybody's going to like me, but like, you don't need to go through so much to try to pretend that you like me then. Like, just walk past me. I'm okay with that. But there was so much of, people like putting on these airs like they like you, or I support you just to let you know. And then the next thing they're going to the next person be like, hey, I got your back and let me door knock for you. And I'm like, okay, like this, it was a lot. I think the other
Oh,
thing that,
that can I just mention this? Sorry. So
yeah,
I remember someone knocking at my door, and they were out, and they were like trying to get one of the city councilors elected at that point, right? And I'm like, excuse me, do you mind if I ask you actually what you're doing today in the neighborhood? And they're like, oh, it's called canvassing. I'm like, oh, that's a good word. Knocking on doors is called canvassing.
no, it's so true. Like, just even you're right there. It's honestly, the whole election process has its own language, its own like literally. And for me, it was an entirely foreign language. Like, I had no idea about any of this stuff. I didn't know about some of the rules behind the scenes, like the ethics violation potentials, like any of that stuff that can be really challenging. And so, it was interesting because you were asked
That
about
haunted you even after.
it, and they still do, right? But one of the things that I will point out that you didn't mention that was a huge barrier for you is that you were still teaching in the district. And so I remember hearing, when people were talking, and I actually was working at the district too. I was working for, for Mass Hire. And so when I was working at Mass Hire, that's working for the city, and you were working for the city. And so, I left my job in July, right before as I was like starting my campaign, but you were still working as a teacher. And people had such issue with that. Now, there have been several people, I won't name names, that have worked for a part of the city and there was no blowback. But I remember specifically people being like, well, she's a teacher and, can't have a teacher and be on the school committee because that's just too close and blah, 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 blah. So what people don't know is you had already had to prepare in your mind, I'm going to have to leave my job in Lowell to get a job elsewhere because I don't want there to be this, this friction or this potential blowback, or for it to look bad or to look like an ethics violation in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
That's a
Well,
huge barrier.
well, the honestly, to tell you the truth, the first time I was confronted with it was with Jerry Nutter on CAP, and he said, "What are you going to do if you actually win?" And in my head, I was like, "I need to tell him something, but I'm not going to win." I'm like, and I was like, "I'll just quit my job. I'll get a job in another district." And then, honestly, when I won, I was in so much shock. Right, the next day, walking in that building, and I
Uh-huh.
was going to stay until the end of the year, but it was an administrator that came to me
Mhm.
and said something about me being on the City Life show and talking about stuff at the high school and how she didn't like that. And I
Mhm.
was like, listen, this is my perceptions as a teacher in the classroom here. And then it just made me feel so uncomfortable because now I'm almost a target. Like, how dare you talk bad about us, right? And
Yeah.
it's not talking bad, it's talking honest and trying to seek that transparency and the truth. So that kind of um, expedited me getting out of there.
Ah, okay. See, you're getting this exclusive, guys. I didn't know that either. I did not know that. I mean, I do remember you on the Jerry Nutter show. I do remember that distinctly because I tried to listen to everybody that was running for school. I wasn't listening to everybody. I listened to everybody that was running for school committee, specifically people that were running for the first time because I wanted to, hear the types of questions that I might be asked as well. 'Cause I didn't want to walk in there blindsided.
I
Um,
didn't even know FM, I mean AM radio was a thing. I didn't. I did. I was, we, it took me a while to catch on to it.
I'm sure all the WCAP fans are like, "What? How No, I think that that's funny because I hadn't watched. Look, I had just started. Honestly, I had just started listening to WCAP. That's funny. When
I,
when the whole what was it? when we were doing a lot of stuff surrounding George Floyd, and I actually had hosted a rally with all the community leaders had come and spoken, and so on and so forth, and people that were just angry constituents that wanted to have their voice heard, and it was really beautiful and peaceful, and it was a pretty long, a long rally actually. But when that happened, I found that people were like talking about it on CAP. People were like, you were on CAP this morning. I was like, for what? What is first of all, what is CAP? And they were telling me this, and I think I had listened to it once or twice, but I hadn't even really thought about it as like a thing. And then my name was like, people like, your name, you were mentioned again on CAP, and not in a positive way. I wasn't mentioned quite regularly as a positive thing.
And how many people actually listen to it that are going to come to you and tell you? Like,
Well, the funny thing is, I always wonder about that. To be entirely, who is their viewership, like, or listener? Who, like, I have no idea who that is, who that makes up. I feel like it's the same few people in Lowell, and I tell people all the time. I feel like there are like 20 to maybe 30 people that run everything that happens in the city, like
no,
literally.
I would agree with you. And then they get it out to their other people who spread it down. And I remember that, like, that was a barrier. I felt like, what are
Mhm.
they saying about me? Like, what's coming out of their mouth about me? Because when you run, you lose control of that. You,
You
you
100%.
you don't, not that you ever control the narrative, but if you stay in your lane and you go to your full-time job and you come home and maybe you work a second job or you have a family or whatever it is, you do kind of control it because you're not putting yourself out there and being vulnerable.
No, you're 100% right. You do, and it's funny because this was like a local election, right? So I think about the people that run for Senate. I think about the people who run for president or governor, and I'm like, the amount of junk that people talk about on a local election, I can't even imagine like how magnified that is on a bigger scale. Because I was living rent free in people's heads. People were talking about me. I mean, and stuff clearly that I had never said. And the things that would come back to me, sometimes you had to wonder, was it the telephone game where, people said one thing really, and then what came back to you was so crazy? Or was it people were saying really ridiculous, crazy things about you, and now they're coming to you? Because some of the things that people were saying about me, I'm like, I never said, I don't even know that person. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not talking to that person. It was really, really a daunting, a daunting thing. I do feel like one of the blessings, I don't know if it's a blessing or not, is that I don't care as much what people think about me, and that's been like something that I've had to deal with for a long time because people have. I always tell people either have a taste for me or they don't, and that's just the way that it is. But yeah, I don't care as much because I've had a life where people have talked so much about me for whatever reason, that I'm really quite used to it. I'm a little numb to it, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, and I remember one morning hearing something on WCAP about me, and literally I was driving to work. Now I know about the AM system. I'm driving to work, listening to it, wanting to hear like something about what's going on in the city, and they bring me up and it was negative, and I remember just crying all my way to work. I work so hard my whole life. I'm not this person that I perceive to be, because then there's what you stand for, and it's how you are able to then articulate it on the floor or show up, like, right. And I think I had hardcore values of what I think,
Mhm.
but I didn't know how well to articulate it.
Yeah,
And
no,
I'm
that's
on a
real.
show.
No, that that it's really hard when people don't get you, right? When people don't
Yep.
get you, and I feel like when people choose not to get you, sometimes we try to give people a pass, like maybe they just didn't understand where I was coming from. Like, no, they do. They just don't like you, right? They just don't like you for whatever reason, and that is what it is. Like, I can't control that. I don't try to control that. It just is going to be what it is. So that's that. Hi, Anthony. You're on my show. So one of the questions that came in was, how do you think parents could help in the campaign process? So how do you think parents could help? And I'm assuming parents in the community. How can they be helping? Not necessarily our parents, but the parents in the
Speak
community.
your voice. Speak your voice of like what your biggest concerns are, because then we could take it on and battle that fight for you, because we don't always know. Anthony, give me your jacket. I have a 12-year-old jumping, hungry little boy.
That doesn't understand that you're on live right now on Instagram clearly, or does not care. But what I will say is while you're mothering, because that's another thing. You know, I find that for me that was a fortunate thing that I did not have to, you know, go home. So for me, I don't know what your days were like when you were campaigning, but for me it was like going to work full time. Sometimes, you know, getting emails during lunch that people were asking me questions, or getting, you know, requests to, you know, say something in the newspaper or say something on some type of podcast or go to a meeting or an event. But then, like, for me, I was like so exhausted because I was like going from work, and then
Yeah.
I would go straight from work to campaign to canvas, or I'd be going to an event or something like that. I was fortunate that I didn't also have, you know, the pull of having a child and having, you know, all of that. I mean, we all have our families and we all have responsibilities to our families, but I definitely give credit to all of you that have, you know, kids, especially kids that are younger that, you know, need your attention. A lot of the people that were campaigning, I feel like are have kids that are older, and so there's not necessarily that pull. But what would you say for you was um, something that if you could have done the first race differently, you would have done? Looking back, you know, on it now, what would you have done differently, if anything?
Structurally wise, like campaign, thinking of the campaign wise,
Mhm.
what would I have done differently?
Yeah, because
Hmm,
I
that's a
could
good
do several things I
question.
would have done differently. One of the things that I would have done differently was start earlier. I decided I waited to the last minute to decide that I was even going to run. And I think even up until like, what do you have to get stuff in by, like June or something like that, or July? I forget what it
Is
is.
it May, like mid-May you can pull papers, and then is it either end of June or early July you have to turn them in?
And so I waited till when I say the last second, I mean the last second. And so for me, it was so stressful trying to get the signatures. And then I feel like because I decided the last second, like trying to get the swag and trying to decide where I was going to have events, there were already all these dates taken because people had already decided way in advance where they were going to have things and had already contracted to get their t-shirts and their yard signage and all that stuff. And I was like, I haven't done any of that. So if anything, for me, start earlier. That would have been my biggest switch.
And I think it's because I didn't know, and I still feel like I don't know, right? It's just like going in the emotion. Like I don't know. Like I don't know what I would have done. You know, um I feel like everything I did was just like rushed and just like,
Mhm.
okay, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, right? But that's just speaking to like my anxiety and how I'm like I have to like I I almost have to have it be like right away. Okay, you have to do this, you have to do this. So I haven't even really had a chance to reflect on it, but maybe definitely more canvassing, since now I know what that means. And knocking on doors or go, I missed a neighborhood forum because I just didn't get the message. And it was something that was given to my mother that she didn't give to me, like clarifying how people can get in touch with me and
Mhm.
what's the best way to get in touch with me or about their issues.
Mhm. So for you, thinking about and that all the things you're saying are, believe me, there were definitely events that I missed, to the point where, and I think a lot of that was, I don't know about your campaign size, like who helped you on your campaign at all, but it was me and two other people. And I think that when you have such a small,
Well, then I
you
just
know,
dropped
people,
something. I'm listening.
okay, when you have such a small set of people working on your campaign, there can be things missed because there's a lot of stress that are put on, you as an individual. And so I missed events, unfortunately, that I think would have been very helpful for me to be at, for me to get to know people, as people would say, the players, the major players, which I hate phrasing like that because I think we're all major players, but people that think of themselves as
as
major.
major players.
And so
And really have been able to be major players because this city has allowed it and like that leeway with it. And
correct. So when we're in there, we're in office. For a lot of people, they're like, "How in the world did they get in? How did they sneak in there?" Right? So we're in there, and what was your first thought of what you expected now that you're in this elected position? And I have to clarify something. People are like, "Oh, you guys do it because of the money." The money is not it, people. $12,500 is not it. I don't know
and you
what
know
you
what,
think that
Stacy?
covers.
That's a great question because do we really make 12,500 or is
No.
it just 12,000? Because this was the issue. It got brought up at the budget
Saw
when we
that.
were
I
kind
saw
of
that.
looking at it. And I think it's just 12,000
It
because
says 12,500, but it is, I believe, only 12,000. But we don't even get that because it's still tax.
yeah,
So, the
and
reality,
retirement.
yeah, that's not like I try to tell people when somebody's doing something like school committee, they're doing it because their heart is committed to that should be the only thing that is incentivizing them. Now, for some people, I'm going to be entirely honest. It's a power thing. People like to be in positions of power, and they like the perceived sense of whatever power that is. But the money is not it, because the money is literally with the amount of meetings that we had, subcommittee meetings, executive sessions, all the things, and then regular meetings, that does not equate. And then just the phone calls that we get from parents and going to, community meetings. There's so much time that is invested and so much hard work that is invested in doing this that I just want to tell you that that was not an incentive for me. I know it was not an incentive for Eileen. That couple extra dollars is, I'm not going to sneeze at having a couple extra dollars, but that's literally
Helpful,
what
but
becomes a couple of extra dollars.
and you
So,
know what? People often, I hear many people say about, talk about some members of the school committee that have been there a very long time. And I can almost see how it does become a little bit addicting
mhm,
because you want to see what happens with your initiatives. You want to see things follow through. And then, I mean, it opens up a lot of room for hurt if it never does. But I think pride in a lot of different ways if it does go through, and to know you're a part of something,
mhm,
and that helped, that for me is, you know, that's one piece of it to know something I contributed help or to take helped or to take my experiences as a teacher and a mother and to integrate them into helping to do something better because like as a teacher I never knew what the school
mhm.
committee ever really did for us. I know sometimes they'd come and walk through the buildings and oh, it was the school committee, but how did they ever help us? Like what did they do? Like I want something better for our teachers in the city too, to feel more appreciated because they're the boots on the ground, and for our students to get what they truly need and deserve.
Absolutely. And I think that, what you're saying just reminds me of us, initially starting and then kind of getting in a few months in. And I feel like everybody starts naming, the type of school committee member that we are. So like you became the special needs, special education, school committee member, because that's your area of expertise. I feel like above all, you know that more than anybody that's in that. I don't care if people who've been principals or whatever else, like that's your area. People cannot touch you on knowing that what's in that, what's invested in that. And I feel like, people start calling me the equity uh school committee member. And I think people said it as if that was gonna bother me. And I was like, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah,
I
that's
took it
my
as
jam.
an honor because I'm like, clearly you don't if you think that that's an insult, you don't understand that equity means that everybody gets what they need. Like that's and
And
for
you
me,
by you saying that, it gives me something I need. I like it.
literally, I never understood why that would be an insult unless you just don't understand the definition, to be honest with you. So when people would say it to me, and we had a lot that I think was really challenging, especially, obviously it was our first time in that situation. We had to learn Robert's rules and all the things. But I think that for us, we were, as you mentioned, we were also walking into this during COVID season. I remember campaigning. I had campaigned with a mask. I was canvassing with a mask on because I didn't want to go to people's door and be like, they're like, I don't know this stranger danger, right? So I was trying to be really respectful. And I remember one of the calls that I got actually during a meeting was from an angry parent. There's like, I don't want my kid wearing a mask anymore. And they were, screeching at me. And I just was calm. And then actually they had left a message for me. This is how this whole thing started. They had left a message for me. I had responded, and they thought I didn't respond to them, right? Which I had responded. So they called me during our meeting and were screaming at me. And I was trying to explain, like, sir, this is the governor. Like, I don't have control over what the governor is saying is a mandate. Like, I can't, in my one vote as a school committee member, say, no, I don't want our kids to wear masks and stay alive, right? So you need to take that further up the chain. But I remember they were coming back from like a February vacation, and we had asked, and I think I was the one who closed it, can we have one more week after they're back from February vacation for them to wear the masks, because everybody gets sick because they're now contaminating themselves with all these random strangers and
Yes.
they're coming back, right? I said, can we, and so this person called me and was like, so I left you a message. I hope that I didn't sound like a jerk. And I was like, right? And they were like, I see that you gave a good vote out on the floor. So it's just sometimes you have to recognize, one of the things that I had to recognize, and I'm going to ask you the same, is, one of the things that I had to recognize is that people sometimes don't know how to articulate or how to speak to how they're feeling, right? So they scream at you, they're aggressive with you. What is one thing that you learned about how some people are communicating?
Ooh. I that goes both ways, right? Because, right, so people communicate with passion, like whether it's emails or it's the phone calls, or they're calling you because they've hit their end point and they're frustrated. And,
Yeah.
sometimes like they want an immediate action, like a reaction to their problem. And so that's tough, right? Because it's like I'm a bleeding heart. I want to fix everything. I want everything to be okay and roses and sunshine and flowers, but the reality is in our positions we can't, right? And we have to figure out ways to communicate that this is what happens, and it kind of explain the chain of things that go on. And I think, coming up with wording motions that are constituents have come to us with became a craft for both of us, because constituents have the real deal issues that are happening, and we need to present that on the floor in an articulate way so that it does get at least heard or dealt with, right? I don't know what happens after we talk about it, but but at least it gets heard.
And I think that I actually love that you segue to that, because I feel like sometimes, and I'm sure we've talked about it, so I know you feel the same way. But I feel like sometimes that people think because we voted some way that we have a way to like literally manually hold somebody's feet to the fire. Yes, we do promote accountability, and we can continue to have conversations and those types of things. But there are some times that we have said this is what's supposed to happen, and then we realize this is what's happening, right? And it's as frustrating, and sometimes more frustrating for us, because we've gone through the muck and the mire of saying, no, this is what you're going to do. This is the path. And people are like, okay, we heard you, but we're still going to do this. And I think for me, that was one of the things that was, I mean, I had seen it. I think, when you look at the global scale of politics, you see that happening. I mean, we see it right now in crazy scale, right? But I think that for us, we didn't see, well, I wasn't aware that it was going to be like a blatant thing that I was going to, kind of
Yeah.
hear. And that was jarring for me.
And that was one of the hardest things. And I'm going to say disclaimer right now because I'm going to talk about the HR
Mhm.
report that I know you felt so
Yeah.
strongly about, and two of our other colleagues felt so strongly about. And I completely saw your point and why. But
Mhm.
I knew that that follow through was never going to happen in the city. And I don't know if it's just from seeing how things have happened or whatever. And I hated the fact, I'm like, are we fighting? Are we mad? Like, like I love you. I didn't want things to be bad between us. I heard all of your points and they made complete sense. I get it. But we're going to spend this money on a great tool
Mhm.
that should help us do better, yet still not. And it came down to the school committee to really tighten up that policy and the procedures at the end of the day. And again, like I say this, like we're tightening up the policies and procedures with all of these meetings. But again, is even that going to work? Because at the end of the day, we only are the boss of the superintendent
Mhm.
and he's the boss of the rest of everybody.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's really a challenging point, and I think it's a point that people don't get. The school committee does not have the ability to go into the HR functionalities of like literally what individual principals are doing or even staff members. So when we see something that is egregious or something we don't like or something that needs to be addressed, we can address it, but only through the superintendent. I actually didn't know that either. I remember digging through like Robert's rules to be like, is there a way around some of this, or what's going on? But I think that that's a really important distinction. The biggest kind of stronghold that the school committee does have is the budget, and really managing that budget with a fine tooth comb. And for those of you who are not paying attention, they are in budget season, just like everything else is in budget season. And if you're not paying attention, do pay attention to some of the things and suggestions that are happening, because right now, specifically in the city, they are trying to take away $4 million. That's the budget book. I'm so glad I don't
This
have to read that anymore.
This is a new one that just was at my door this morning, and it's quite interesting because it should all be in sync. But I'm going to take it and compare it to that big budget book and see if it is accurate, you know?
Yeah, that took up many, many, many days going through that, because for me it wasn't just something that I wanted to give like a once over. I was fine tooth combing page for page, salary, where things were missing, where things didn't add up, where things looked like they were, maybe looking a little weird, right? Or a little odd. I'm like, why does this not number, where's this money missing on this line? I want to understand it. Why? Because not just because the taxpayers deserve that, but because the students deserve that. At the end of the day, when things don't match up, then somebody's getting the shaft, and it definitely is not going
Right.
to be the students. And so that was
And
really a really important thing.
yeah, and with the headlines in the newspaper just yesterday, it's $4 million less in the budget and 2.5% tax increase, I think it is, right? And I said yesterday, even on City Life, with Cliff Krieger, and we had Corey Belanger on and John McDonough, I had said, what about the city? Does the city have any cuts? Like, I can tell you what teachers and powers are doing, but I can't tell you what like the third, fourth, and fifth highest paid person at City Hall does, right? So why shouldn't there be cuts there?
Isn't that a curious point, Eileen? I think, and again, it feels like this, and I want to be clear, right? When there's a cut, that's detrimental. But even to be level funded is already a cut when the cost of everything goes up, right? So the fact that they were cut beyond just being level funded is totally nuts. I mean, it is totally nuts. It is so offensive to all the paras and all the positions. And one of the positions that I noted that I did not see was equity, right? So if you're going to be a city that has equity on its main page as an important thing, as one of its standards, then how do you not have a chief of equity? How do you not have an equity position? I don't understand that. And that was just a brief overview of the budget, and what I noted was not there. Right? So
Right.
that's the problem.
They brought up the Public Works report that they did for the restructuring the other night, and equity was a branch that stayed tight in all of there,
Yeah.
and it even changed its name to Diversity, Belonging, and Inclusion, I believe,
Yeah.
DBI.
Yeah.
And so it's just like and they say they're cutting three whatever million from central office, but what I see is we're losing equity. We're losing the parent family liaison who was just we were just starting to make some headway with
Right.
teaching English to parents who don't know how to communicate the bare bones basics. How
Mhm.
can we build on that if we keep cutting from
Right.
that? The Latinx program.
Yep.
Um, there, the early college promise, and they even came on Wednesday night and gave us nice bags, and then we're going to say we're taking money.
Like, thanks for the
Bye.
bag. We're going to be taking these bags and taking money from you. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like, I mean, and me saying it's unfortunate doesn't really contain and probably give a full demonstration of how angry I am about the fact that the city made, I mean, literally, then if that's the case, if equity is not a thing for you, you need to change the entire motto of the district because it's literally on your site that equity is important. But nowhere in there do you have equity as a mainstay. So wherever you prioritize the money is where you prioritize. Point blank period.
Yeah,
So
and like
we're running out of time, but I wanted to give people this maybe exclusive. Is somebody potentially thinking about something coming the fall again, Eileen?
yes, I'm addicted. I'm going to run again.
So for those of you who live in, so your district is back central as well as Centerville, correct?
Yep, districts 2 and 4, which is Centerville to downtown in the back central area. Yeah.
Excellent. So for those of you who are looking for somebody who is equity focused, you're looking for somebody who cares fully about the students, somebody that knows and really stands by making sure that all students get what they need, really understands fully what special education needs to look like and feel like, then this is somebody that you really want to pay attention to. You know, I've gotten to know Eileen over time, and one of the things I say to her, I'm like, you're quirky, but don't change, right? You're quirky, you're yourself. People don't always get you, but that's okay. They don't always have to get you. What they can't say is that you don't stand by what you believe. They can't say that about you. They can't say that you're not dedicated to the students, and they can't say that you don't want to make sure that equity is a focus in the school system and in the district. So they can't say that about you. And for those reasons, I'm firmly saying that they need to be considering supporting you, helping you in all the ways that they can, because, that's not necessarily a focus everywhere. But I'll also say people keep asking me, no, I'm not running.
Come on.
I'm like, no, no, thank you.
Thank
I
you for all those kind words.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I more than love supporting from the background. I love still impacting change, and I am, and I will continue to do that. So, I thank you, Eileen, for sharing some time with me today. I wish we had more time because there's lots of stories that we could get into. But what I will say is, like I say at the end of all of my episodes, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and please extend to yourself and to me a measure of grace. Have a great rest of your Saturday, and I hope to see you next Saturday on Sipping Tea with Stacey T. Bye, everyone.
Bye.